First off, thank you to everyone for taking some time to join us and talk about recruiting. Uh, with us, we have Carl McCargo, who's been kind enough to send out the link to host it in case my computer, which has a penchant for doing, sometimes reboots on its own. Carl's with Essex Poles, also owns Track Barn, former decathlete. Coach Davis from Marietta College in Ohio. Coach Mercado down at Houston St. John's. Jasmine Moore from Mansfield Lake Ridge with her father Earl, and Jazz is now at the University of Georgia. We have London Cubreath with parents. London's at the University of Arkansas. Will Grundy, Texas Miles Split. Webmaster, Coach Richards, head coach over at McKinney North. There is Shelton, the head coach at Humble Summer Creek. Greg Williams, head coach at Lancaster. Coach Thomas, assistant coach over at National Championship, Texas Tech. And already learning about recruiting because apparently we had to go through some compliance hoops to realize that you were allowed to Zoom with us on D1 with the NCAA.
26 minutes ago.
Coach Loeffler from Trinity, who did not have that problem. She's at D3. And there's Luke and Rudy Hernandez from Dallas Bishop Lynch, who will help with the first couple of questions with the coaches as well. What has it been like recruiting and or being recruited during the pandemic?
Is that directed toward us first?
You want us to start?
Yeah, go ahead and start, and then coaches, college coaches can fill in because the whole parameter has changed, as Coach Thomas was mentioning just a minute ago. I mean, the NCAA is, and it's no fault of their own, but no one saw, the entire sports world being stopped like it is, and recruiting got affected. So, Luke, start us off. How did recruiting during COVID-19 happen for you?
Yeah, I mean, we were kind of like getting down to our last couple of schools whenever the pandemic started. And so once it kind of like closed our schools and stopped our meets, I mean, we were kind of in a frantic just state of mind. We didn't know what was going to happen. Like, were we still going to be able to meet with coaches, call coaches, go on visits? And that's when my parents started coming to me saying, hey, we need to really look at this. What do you want to do? Because now you're not going to be able to race and possibly not go to visit campuses and schools. And so that's when I was like, okay, I need to really start contacting coaches, see what I can do. And that's when I started realizing, okay, I need to kind of just find my parameters of where I want to go, who I want to be coached under, what program is going to be best for me. And then once I did that, started just kind of making the list smaller and then talked to a bunch of coaches and then made my decision. But I was kind of hesitant. I was like, do I wait, see if something happens, or do I just sign now? And that was kind of the big question most of the time was, where's my next step? Kind of, what do I do?
I think to elaborate on the parent side, Luke was just down to kind of picking and choosing at the end here. But we didn't know just because everything had just kind of come to a stop. But before all that happened, I guess the easy part to say, he had done his legwork or his homework before that. And he can talk a little bit more about why he chose what he chose. But early in the game, we kind of had to make a decision which route we take. And what I mean by that is we look at our coaches to say, hey, and this is talking about being younger, freshman, sophomore, when the student athlete starts, I guess, to be noticed by other teams and doing well at meets and friends and stuff like that. Because social media for these runners is such a big deal, and it's a big deal in a way of communicating. They helped each other. Even Luke was telling me stories where they communicate with each other to help boys that weren't signed yet to help get noticed by other coaches. And during this time frame that the kids have been off, they helped a couple of the other buddies within running groups of different high schools here in North Texas get signed on with some schools. So the social media, the kids, that's a tight group. They compete against each other, but they're a tight group and they're there to help each other. But kind of to go back to what I was saying, early when Luke was running freshman, sophomore year, we figured, well, maybe he could run at the college level. And we have to make a decision. We chat with our coaches, and you have to make a decision how comfortable you feel with your coaches to say, hey, who's going to communicate or help possibly our son or daughter get noticed, or what do we do? Our school did have somebody come in, a recruiter type, early in I think sophomore year. He kind of told us a little bit about some stuff, but to be honest, the NCSA, the one that is on athletic.net, and I think our school now, if I'm not mistaken, maybe more tied into them, was actually the key. There's a little bit of dollars tied to it, but the NCSA allowed, it was a portal where data was put in and data went out, and you have a coach on the other end, a recruiting coach, help communicate to all these coaches. And it's easier. We learned through Luke, it was easier to communicate with coaches and get results back and communication back through NCSA, because he wrote, as I call it in business world, he did a lot of cold calling to coaches, but very low response rate. But the NCSA program they have put together has been phenomenal. I mean, we had to do an exercise for our high school where the kids are all finishing up. So our high school tries to find out how many scholarship dollars a kid gets. And so we had to do that just two days ago. So we did that on Luke's part. And we come to find out, basically through the NCSA, if you add up the firm communications with coaches that we had like $275,000 in scholarships to Luke, and that wasn't the 20 probably Division II NAIA schools that weren't on our radar just because they were so far away or didn't have the degree plan that Luke was looking for. But Luke's not one of the top in the state, maybe good for the Dallas area. But what felt good about that whole program, the NCSA, was the information got out, and some of these coaches took time to I guess review that portal and get back to the students. And Luke would review it. We'd all get our little dings on our phone saying, hey, this coach sent you a note. It was pretty neat how that whole thing worked about. But it's a strength, it's a tool. The other part for the kids is do good in school. I mean, a big chunk of what helped Luke make his decision was the academic side. It's not all athletics. All the money doesn't come from athletics, especially in track and field and cross country, especially. If you got good grades and you do good on your SATs, a good chunk of your money will come from the support from each of these universities,
Right.
And get you some additional money. But I'll let Luke just give about another couple of minutes and then move on.
Hold on, Luke. So Coach Davis, Coach Thomas, Coach Loeffler, with what's going on right now, how have you guys adjusted to recruiting, not only to finish out this year, but to start next year? Because we're not sure exactly how next year is even starting.
Well, I can't speak for everybody else, but I've had to learn how to use Zoom really quick. If you asked me 8 weeks ago what Zoom was, I would have told you a car that drives really fast. So we're doing a lot of virtual stuff. At my campus, we're actually not allowed on campus right now with outsiders. So we're doing a lot of virtual tours, things of that nature. A lot more text messaging, a lot more phone calls, and meetings like this, just so we can kind of see each other's faces. So I've been in the business for 20 years, and this is a little bit scary for me, having to learn how to use a computer, because like I said, 8 weeks ago, I probably couldn't turn one on. But look at us now. So.
Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I think probably the biggest change that I felt like I've experienced is everything obviously is digital, but there's a lot of coaches that are in a kind of a limbo stage because it doesn't just affect this year's seniors who are graduating. The big part of this thing is we don't have any seniors now graduating next year. A lot of schools are returning people back next year. So the big kind of recruiting barrage that normally happens around this time of year to every rising senior from every level, D2, D3, NAI, everything. This summer is where we reach out to a lot of juniors. This is where we go to a lot of meets, from USATF Junior Olympics to all these other things that are out there. Now we're walking in there with this kind of uncertainty. Who in our team's graduating now that doesn't want to return? Does your conference support them returning? Does your school support them returning if all they have remaining is an outdoor season? So we've done more of our recruiting has been amongst our staff. We're just trying to figure out as a staff, with technically not a single graduating senior now, because everybody returns back with the same eligibility, and the seniors that we had this year getting to come back, but it doesn't count against our technical dollars for scholarship. Do we have any scholarships to even recruit with? And if we do, how do we go about that? And so it's going to be I think the one thing that's going to be different with us, and I'm pretty sure a lot of programs, is some of the uncertainty. It doesn't stop our recruiting. I think everybody's still reaching out to 21 class and starting to reach out to even 22 class with these large mail outs and things like that, and communication and social media. But I think the biggest communication now is the uncertainty. And so most of it's in-house type of thing. And this recruiting across the country or in the city or in the state, like you have recruiting dollars to work with when you're not positive if you do.
Yeah, ours was definitely affected by some of the same ways you guys are feeling. We had a few out-of-state kids that we had pushed for visits early, and we're really happy that we did that because they got to visit campus before all this happened. But even Texas is such a huge state that even the kids we're recruiting in-state needed. If they didn't visit early, we definitely had to do the virtual tours and make sure we had all of that set up. So reaching out has not stopped. I mean, we've definitely been putting the pedal down on that. But yeah, just adapting to the new landscape and knowing that coaches are still going to be reaching out, I think is important to remember right now for most recruits.
Okay. Next question, and this is more towards the high school coaches, and then we can get others to chime in as well. When you see an athlete on your campus, a track athlete on your campus, or cross country, obviously, and you recognize that this young man or woman has potential to compete in college, regardless of level, how do you approach them? How do you take them through the process of educating them about what it's like to go through, the recruiting process? Go ahead, Greg.
Okay, I'll go first. One thing that I tell my younger kids is to just watch the kids that are ahead of them. Watch how their process goes. We have a pretty close-knit team, so they all talk about recruiting and the pitfalls and the ups and downs of it. One thing that's really, I'm not going to say unique, but good about our situation, well, really two things. Number one, we have a college center to where all the kids can go in. They're actually called in as juniors and get their transcript looked at. They do all of their FAFSA information. We make sure that all of their the things are taken care of as they get ready to go into their senior year. And if they haven't done it by then, we really hound them to make sure they get those things taken care of. So getting their test taken, test scores, different things like that, we try and push them to do that either their sophomore or junior year. Another thing that happens is with our school being the type of school that we are, we can test our kids as sophomores. We do a full ACT for the sophomore class. And so that kind of gets them going in the right direction as far as that goes. And then the last thing, we have a recruiting coordinator on the football team. So, and he used to be one of my assistants. So he works with the track team also to get a lot of the kids acclimated to what they're going to see, talking to coaches, getting them hooked up with some coaches. I have a lot of coaching friends who we all have kind of a file of coaches' emails and things like that, and make out a list of seniors and juniors and send those out to the coaches as we go forward. So our situation is fairly well to where we can make those things happen for our kids, and just kind of, like I say, educating them on what they're going to see.
Coach Richards?
Yeah, we don't have near as many amenities as Lancaster, but just talking to those kids, identifying them early, anywhere from the freshman to sophomore year, if this is something that they would possibly want to do in the future, kind of keeping that on the radar. I encourage all of them to go on to the school's websites and fill out the online questionnaires so that at least that information is getting to the coaches. We kind of go through a list of, okay, where's your top 10, maybe a couple of dream ones, realistic ones for where we are right now, and then maybe more academic side, a list of schools. I send an email out to the coaches. I also encourage the athletes to send emails to the coaches, and we go over kind of even what that needs to look like, short, sweet, to the point, test scores, PRs, your mile split profile, things like that where they can get access to quickly and verify it. And then that's kind of it from there, or with the contact info. And then just, being persistent with that process. So just checking up with them and doing our best to get their name out to the college coaches of their interest.
Excellent. Richie?
We're in a different boat with private school athletes. We don't have a whole lot of D1 except for Ivy Leagues. These kids, they don't want to go to D2s academically. A lot of D3. Lauren and I have talked a lot in the past, and we've had some pretty good kids. And ironically, the best male track and field athlete we've ever had wanted to play football and do track and field, and he signed at a really good university with a good football program that Northwestern University dropped their track program 25 years ago. So, and needless to say, they didn't run this spring anyway. We start off with we've got a recruiting coordinator, and she starts trying to get names from coaches when they're in 10th grade. And usually the kids will show you they're interested. And ours, a lot of them want to do D3s or Ivies. And then we do kind of the same thing Jessica was saying. I'd say the first thing I say is go on the website, places that interest you, because they're looking more for academics, places that interest you, look at their program for cross country, for track, see what their performance times are. If they have a online questionnaire, fill that out first. That gets you in their face, and then they can get in contact with you. And then the other thing is that, and this is what I tell kids, and maybe Lauren and James and others can comment on this, but every institution, D1, D2, T3, has lists of criteria for recruits, and even for walk-ons sometimes. And a lot of times they'll get something back from that. I say email the coaches too. They'll get something back that says, well, here's our standard for this event, and if you reach that, get back in touch with us. And I tell them, this is my view on it, and I talk to some coaches, and I kind of know the reality of it, at least from my end and for the kids. Just be persistent, keep working hard, and keep getting in contact. And I help getting in contact too, because a lot of times those are pretty high, I think, to either encourage kids to work harder and get there, or discourage kids who are like, oh, I can't make that standard. And then they're also pretty fluid. And we had a kid just yesterday, his dad called me and said he finally got a committed spot from a D3 university in their program because he impressed the guy and they just made a spot for him. And that's one where, you know, he technically didn't make one of the standards, he did another, but the guy was so impressed with his work ethic that he put him on there. So, you know, we tell them to start with the contact, and then we do a lot of hands-on with them too, in terms of helping contact coaches too, to get information out. And it's a little different with the D3s especially, and the IVs, because there's no money involved. So we can do more contact and so forth.
Shelton.
We're in the day and age of social media, so social media is huge, and I try to emphasize to the kids that they can market themselves nowadays. We're fortunate to be supported by the Booster Club, where all our sports have a huddle account. So the video that we record at the meet, the kids can, once we upload it the next day, they can create their highlight tape from their huddle and then share it via their social media. So it gets back to the social media, where the social media has to be clean. You can't have a social media handle that does not have your first name and your last name in it. Pookie and Ray Ray run fast. I said John Doe runs fast. Then not only that, but in your social media, take Twitter, for example, you can put your PRs, you can put your SAT scores, you can put your link to Texas Mile Split. I think Will does a great job, and his crew with the times and the marks that's on Texas Mile Split. So I try to educate my kids of all those resources that they have to market themselves via their social media, just the way that I have with the Summer Creek Track and Field Twitter account. They can do the exact same. So making them aware of that, and then obviously what they put out there, what they retweet, what they like is a representative of them. Educating them not to do stuff like that, or not to post things that's out of character or out of value and belief that was instilled in you at a young age. And the same way that Greg has at Lancaster, I put together an NCAA compliance meeting at the beginning of the year. I provide each kid with their transcript. I also provide each kid with a PowerPoint presentation that's done by a compliance office that's the NCAA one institution. And I just read off that 13 points are the important things and the updates that the NCAA, the same thing that James get at the beginning of the year at the compliance meeting. I get that same PowerPoint from the university that I use as a resource, and I read it to them of the changes that's taking place at the NCAA, because it's changing every year, especially with the amount of contact that you can do, and then the ways you can contact, and then the visitations and things of that nature. Juniors now able to be contacted. So I try to fill them in at the beginning of the year, and Greg and Jessica can testify to this. Just like parent meetings, just because you invite them or you make it mandatory does not mean that everybody take advantage of the resources that's available to them. So we try to continue to emphasize it and hope they get it before it's too late. Taking advantage of the free tests that you might have if you are free and reduced lunch. So we just basically educating them on the resources that's provided on campus, the resources that they have, the power that they have as individuals. It works for us so far.
All right, well, before we get to our two young ladies over here who we know are just dying to talk, we've mentioned Mile Split a couple times, and Will is here with us. He's the Texas Mile Split webmaster. Will, I know you have a class this evening. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk, introduce yourself, but as well tell us how Mile Split really does help with the recruiting process. It's not just a database where kids, where you put in meet results and interviews. If used well, it can really help with recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think that we are just the video or photo a part of that, and a lot of the social media, which we are. But I think the most important thing about track and field and the world sports nowadays is are the stats. That's what people look at. So the importance of either the meet directors or coaches or us reaching out to get the results is even more important, and as we see that today, that's the case. These events or the results go on the profiles. It's like Coach Shelton said, it's important to know your profile, to keep up with it. Sometimes, it's electronic, so a lot of things can happen. You can get someone else's time or distance or whatever on your profile, and that not be accurate, and a coach can see that, and it could look off. You can get you can be London Cubreath and you're a distance runner. You have a javelin or a discus profile or something like that on your profile, and that can raise some red flags. So it's important. It's a avenue for coaches to come. I mean, they can't go to every track meet in the world, so they can just jump online and see a place where they can see the results and see how an athlete is improving or who they want to put their eye on or spend their time on. It's a resource for them, as well as the parents, coaches, and like you said, the athletes. I think right now it's even more important because like some of the coaches were saying, like Coach Thomas said, you don't know who's graduating or who's coming back or who isn't. So a college coach, class balance is important to them when you're thinking of an event. You don't want to have 10 jumpers on scholarship, and you don't want to have one distance runner, so you need to know what you need to recruit. So it's an avenue for them to check things out. So we're just trying to be that. Even college coaches right now, some can't approach or reach out to athletes. We have a database. Unfortunately, we can't just give that information out to the coaches, but would athletes say, hey, Will, do you know this? Or a coach or a parent, hey, I'm looking for this. What do you know about this school or this coach, or vice versa for the coaches to ask, hey, do you know who coaches McKinney North or whatsoever? We're able to give out stuff like that. So, I mean, just being a platform for everybody to use outside of the basic interviews or race videos or photos and stuff like that.
All right, Jazz in London, two of our more decorated athletes out of the state of Texas, easily in the last 20, 30 years, perhaps even longer. What was the recruiting process like for you? And then Jazz, why did you pick Georgia over whomever else recruited you? What was the difference? And same with you, London, why Arkansas? So whichever of the two of you would like to go first, take us through the process and your decision.
That's for you.
Oh, well, that wasn't sure. Okay. Anyways, so I guess as far as like the process, well, my dad obviously, he did a lot of work for me as far as like reaching out to colleges. I think like my freshman year.
Eighth grade year.
Okay. Anywho, he like sent out like to a bunch of coaches, just my information, just to kind of get my name out there. And then I feel like just as I've progressed through high school, a lot of coaches like started to like contact me, and it was kind of overwhelming. So I feel like I narrowed it down pretty early. Like I think the end of my junior year, right? End of my junior year, I started narrowing it down because I had taken a lot of unofficial visits. So I kind of knew what I liked, knew kind of where I wanted to be located, conferences and stuff like that. So I took 4 official visits, and that was kind of it for me. Like I knew, like I said, like I looked at jump coach, the progression of who they had coached in the past, and how far they took those athletes, made sure that they obviously had my major, and just kind of who was on their team as well. Like that's obviously who I'm around the most, and a lot of my friends are on the track team, so I wanted to be surrounded by people who were motivated and who had the same goals as me, who were going to work hard, and like different programs offer different things.
You said it was overwhelming. How was it overwhelming? Were you just bombarded daily with mail and texts?
Yeah, like some coaches would call every single day. And then it was just so many schools at first. So it was just a lot to take in, especially whenever I'm still trying to, have everyday life, like go to school, like they'll text me at school, or like when I'm at school, they'll call. Like if I was hanging out with my friends, if I was at practice, it was just a lot. Like just communicating, I guess, for me.
So how did you finally make the decision? Why Georgia over whomever else, including my alma mater, which you still break my heart?
I chose Georgia just because of how consistent they were. Some schools, like whenever I was jumping like 41 or 42 feet, like they didn't care. But then whenever I was jumping 45, it's like, oh, automatically they like pick up. And I liked how consistent Georgia was. throughout my whole high school experience. And then I loved the coach, and I had seen what he did in the past, and I trusted him going into college that he could do the same thing for me. And then again, as far as like the team and who was on the team, a lot of the kids who were at Georgia, like I've been on either like a USA team or like I've seen them at meets, and I just became close with all of them, and I knew how bad they wanted to win and how motivated they were. And I wanted to be surrounded by people that wanted to win and wanted to work hard just as much as I did.
Well, you've done well because you got some honors and awards during the freshman indoor season. So congratulations there. Yeah. London, what about you? What's the process like? You signed before COVID and all that kind of stuff. So what was the process like for you, and why Arkansas?
I mean, it was pretty stressful. Yeah, had a hard time. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, for me, it was pretty stressful. I had, it was really hard for me to limit down my list. I kept, reaching out to coaches and, talking and building these relationships and finding out more about these colleges. But I found it hard to, limit it down. And I felt like I had to just kind of sit down and make a list of things that I wanted in a college or things that I didn't, or what was most important. And my parents and coaches really helped out a lot. It was, honestly, it was like bombarding. I was bombarded by everything, whether it was calls or research. I always felt like I needed to have something done or get something done. And so it was a lot, but I was still blessed to have the opportunity to have it like that. So.
And for the parents, Earl and Paula, Mike, and Rudy, what was the process like for y'all?
If I had to say anything to the parents and the kids that were looking to be recruited, one thing I would say is start early. You can't start early enough. Mm-hmm. We didn't. And so junior year was crazy. And I want to thank Earl. Because, yes. Because I called Earl, and anytime we were at a track meet, and we talked, and that's what I would say to the parents is talk to someone that's gone through this, especially if this is your first child. You have no idea, and the rules and just the things you have to do that you have no idea what to do. So thank you, Earl.
Yes. Those home visit tips, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So, Earl, what are your home visit tips?
I can't remember what I said back then. It was probably about food or something.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I didn't even know about him, so he's the one that told me about it. And I think my jaw dropped, and I said, "What?" And he had to tell me what you do on the home visits and the food I was supposed to cook. And
oh wow, college coaches, is that right? When Coach Davis, Coach Thomas, Coach Lawfer, you go into home, are you expecting a spread?
Well, we're actually in a unique situation in my conference. We're not allowed to do home visits.
Yeah, I would say from our end, we expect it, but I do have a rule that I won't turn anything down if I'm in a living room. So if they offer me 3 bottles of water, I'm drinking 3. If they offer me some food I don't eat, I'm killing it. So it's just one of those rules I was told as a young assistant my first year. If they offer you something, say no. I've been to weddings unprepared. I've just done all kind of stuff. So yeah, you just get prepared for anything.
As far as me, the whole recruiting journey, like Jasmine stated, started very early. When she jumped over 40 feet as an 8th grader, it was a website out back then. It allowed me to input her information, and it would send my note to, if you had the correct email address, to all the Division I schools, Division II, Division III. You could select what region you wanted, etc. So I started sending out emails again as an 8th grade, and we started creating a bio for Jasmine, all throughout her career. And like she stated, we started doing unofficial visits as a freshman. I'm so glad that people thought we were crazy, but I was so glad that we went all around the world and visited the different universities. I had started researching jump coaches. So I probably knew more than they expected me to know about them, because I really researched their past 10 years to understand, how they were, how they performed, with the different athletes within their conferences. So we kind of use that as a roadmap to help navigate where we would go and visit, but it really gave Jasmine an opportunity to start building relationships, start understanding the university, the coaches, the type of programs that they had, so I think it made it a lot easier for her to narrow down. And, because she had visited every school, even every school that we went on the official visits, she had done unofficial visits with them as well. So for her, it really helped her narrow down her choices. And again, but it allowed to build relationships over time and not just for a 3-month window. Because I truly believe anybody can make you feel good for 2-3 months, but show the consistency over time. And I think that really helped her make her decision. But I truly invested a lot of time, because no one loved my kids like I love my kids. So I really encourage the parents to be active in the process and not to expect, that some coach is going to do that for them.
Can I say one thing too?
Of course.
Like, obviously I know you can't do visits right now, but like, I encourage unofficials, just because like on your official visit, it's only 48 hours and they try to throw so much at you. So for me to feel comfortable, at least for me to be able to feel comfortable at a school, it was nice knowing that I had at least gone there like one other time, just because your official visits are so crazy.
Which brings up a really good point. And I'm going to open this to anyone who wants to respond first. What actually happens on an official visit?
A lot of talking. At least, as far as like the academic side, you learn more about that, and then you kind of get to hang out with the team and kind of see who you're going to be around a lot more. And yeah, just talking about like numbers and like where you would fit in at their program and stuff.
So we had a chance to, see all the facilities, talk to different department heads. So that was good, We found out a little bit more, right? We had done our research, and on our unofficial visits, we didn't get a chance to, of course, unofficial visits, we couldn't see everything that we saw on the official visits, as far as really from the academic side. The unofficial visits, we really, went to a football game and, had fun. But for me, it was good, because since we had did the unofficial visits, we saw all of here's the facility, things that make you feel good. So for us, we really invested time into the school, and I really encouraged Jasmine to get to know the team, because that's who she will be spending time with, is the team. Really talk to them, because they'll tell you the real deal, right? The coach is going to make you feel good, but go talk to some of the teammates, and, they will tell you the truth. And that's, really what I encourage Jasmine to do on the official visits, because we had saw, here's the gear that you're going to wear. So she wasn't woo-wooed by that on the official visits, because she had done that so many times during the unofficial visits.
London, is that what you found to be as well on an official visit?
I think getting to bond with the team was a really big section of like what I found important. Like, I needed to feel like these girls were, going to be my best friends. Like, I could see myself with them. And I think whenever I would find, a group of girls, like, I was like, okay, like, that put them up high. And so, these girls are going to be the girls you're going to be rooming with, running with, laughing with, crying with, you want it to feel right. And I think that was a really big portion of my decision.
Luke?
Yeah, I mean, the visits were all just about, like, for me, learning that this could be like your next 4 years of your life. This needs to be what you're comfortable with, what you're happy with. On a school side, like making sure this is the school you want to go to. This is the degree you want to learn from these professors, and like going to the team aspect. Like London said, this is the people who you're going to be with for the next 4 years. These are like your brothers and sisters. You need to feel comfortable. You need to feel happy and just enjoy being there, doing what you love, running, and then also just getting to be with the same people that also love doing the same thing you get to do.
Coach Davis, Thomas, and Loeffler, when you bring an athlete onto campus, what can they expect?
I'll jump on this one. I think one of the unique things that are starting to happen with these college visits, as groups get tighter, and you can tell programs where they have tight knit groups. I mean, these people train together; they have the camaraderie. It's a team deal. I think our current student athletes are getting a lot more involved with getting to know athletes, but also kind of that thumbs up, thumbs down process. A lot of it is kind of that, that wine and dine. You're getting to know the family, you're getting to know the athletes, they're getting opportunity to get a feel for that environment. But one thing that our program does, and I think a lot of other programs do too, and I think even within a lot of coaches, they have communication of what do you think about this person? Are they a good fit? Some people could be incredible athletes, but not necessarily the right fit. Some people you may not have thought were as talented, but they came in there and they meshed with the group immediately. So it can change your whole mindset. So with the limited amount of scholarships and the amount of official visits that are brought in, there's a lot more of a selection process that people know. There's certain elite athletes that everybody in the country is going to offer them a full ride, whether they like you or they don't personally. There's going to be a lot of people that are in that middle level where you're trying to decide between 30, 40, 50, 60% scholarship or even a full scholarship, and you only have a few to work with, who fits the correct way. So we're interviewing both ways. They're interviewing us in a lot of ways, and our head coach, when you go sit in the office and you meet with him or you go meet with the rest of the staff or the athletes, they're interviewing as well. So I've been telling a lot of coaches that I speak with, trying to advise them to, they're going to be social media. They're taking pictures. We like that. They're going to talk about it, but don't just be glued to your phone. Don't be glued to certain things. Interact, get to know certain people, because at the end, we sit amongst the staff and figure out who can we offer, who can we not. And even if you have been offered by multiple people, it still gets to a situation where you want to put your best foot forward, especially if you only have 48 hours to do it. And, they're going to take, if you say you want to go out and you want to have a good time, our athletes know to kind of cater to you a little bit. But if you go out there and the first thing you're asking to do is drink or drugs or stuff like that, they're going to come back and they're letting us know this isn't the right type of person. This isn't the right type of fit. We let them do what they're going to do, but coach, let's not do this one. So that's my biggest advice. Just understand that this isn't just you kind of nitpicking about and evaluating programs. Those programs are also evaluating you for the best fit, and those other coaches talk to other coaches about the evaluation they made about you. So just be careful, because I've had people tell me, man, how'd you think about this person, that person? When they came here, all they did was this. And just because they told me that, sometimes that can turn you off on somebody. But people gossip at high school level, they gossip at the college level.
Coach Loeffler?
Yeah, I really like our official and unofficial visits because it gives the potential student athlete a chance to see how we interact as coaches with the team as well. It's not just like, how the team sees us. It's also how we interact with the team and the type of support we give them. I really enjoy having them at practice and watching us interact with the team. That's one of my favorite parts of the official visits. But also just giving them the chance to see all the things we have. And especially coming from a smaller school, we don't necessarily have as much recognition as some bigger school names have. And so showing them that we actually can compete on a lot of different levels with some of those schools, even with a smaller campus and smaller school size, I love that chance. And I think that the official visits really give us the opportunity to do that. And our team's great. They absolutely help a ton in those visits, showing what our personality of our program is like and how much we put into this program is really important to us as well. So the team does a good job of communicating that, but yeah, getting to stay overnight is a big deal for us. That's one of the ways we kind of, like I said, like the other coaches have said, evaluate and see if they're going to be a good fit for our program as well.
All right, I've got another open-ended question. So whoever wants to jump in, feel free, parents, athletes, coaches, whomever. So you've gone on an official visit. You haven't committed yet. What happens after the official visit? How do you keep in touch with them? When do you make your decision? What happens in that time between the official visit and the actual commitment?
I'll speak. This is Earl. I'll speak for us. So after every official visit, you know, we would come back home because, you know, Jasmine had some, I mean, I think it was criteria, you know, based on every visit. So we would try immediately, try to assess the visit, you know, while everything was still fresh in her head. But I would tell you, all the visits, it was a mess because, again, all the visits was well, so it was so confusing. I mean, you go to a school and it would just be a great 48 hours, you know, and as we would download, you know, and then the next week, again, another great visit, and, you know, you're trying to compare the two, but it was really, again, trying to assess immediately how the visit went, the pros, the cons, and then try to document it too, right? So you can always reflect back on it. And I mean, really, after all of the 4 visits were made, you know, had Jasmine just take some time to herself to really make her decision. And we wanted it to be Jasmine's decision, not, you know, me and Trinette's decision. And because Jasmine needed to feel comfortable. Because like I explained to her, wherever she's at, I will not be there every day. So I need for you to, you know, be comfortable with the decision that you make. But that was kind of some things that we used to make the decision along the way.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Richie.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here, just a couple examples, and it's just like any communication with anybody, coach, athlete, recruiting coach, whatever. It's just the honesty, because there's been some times the honesty's been great, and some other times some of the athletes say, well, I'm not calling them back, or I haven't talked to them, I want to wait. I say, well, at least just let them know you're thinking, you know, just don't ghost them. And then we had an Ivy League coach completely just failed to communicate, just ghosted her, and she decided just not to even compete at the university she went to. It just kind of crushed her. And just, you know, from the athlete's point of view and the coach point of view, just be honest. And I understand athletes want to keep their avenues open, but at least be honest, say, hey, I, you know, enjoyed it. I'm looking at other things too, but, you know, from both sides. And there was a kid recently, as I mentioned, a D3, and I had talked to the coach even, but this kid hadn't heard from him for a month. Even after I talked to him, he said, yeah, I'm really thinking about offering him a spot. And finally he did. He said, you know, I'm checking on numbers, and it had to do with, you know, May 1st being the deadline for admissions and acceptances and that kind of thing. But he finally got back, but it just, you know, it causes problems on both sides. And I understand it's hard for coaches too, but it's just the more communication. And if there's something wrong with an athlete, tell them. Or if they say, well, you know, we may not have a spot for you, you know, we'll let you know. At least anything is better than just leaving them hanging. And the same thing from the athlete's point of view. Don't leave the coaches hanging.
I've got something, you know, like Earl said, we would leave every official visit and think, oh, we're going there. You know, I mean, because every one of them was so nice. I mean, every time we left on the way home, you know, we talked about them, and that's all we could talk about is what was there. And, you know, I mean, every one of them, we left there thinking that's where we're going. And another thing, you know, London, the first coach that talked to her told her, he said, you know, the second best thing you can tell me is no. He said, so that I can concentrate on these other students that actually are interested in us. So, you know, be honest with the coaches. If you're not interested, don't lead them on. You know, don't hang on and have them coming back and forth, you know, and trying to figure out what's going on with you. But so just be honest with them, and you know, we expect the coaches to do the same for us.
And I'll piggyback on that because we are in this day and age of look at me now. A lot of people get these 20 and 40 offers and they blasting it out on social media for likes or for kicks or whatnot. And that's all cool and dandy. But literally, if you don't have a rubric like Jazz had and you narrowing yours down, you actually have a system where you weigh in the pros and the cons and not just trying to collect offers. Then it turns into a whole different spin of why you want to go to an institution and what is your true purpose of your next level of college. I recently had a conversation with one of my kids who had 10 offers. Like, that's cool. Now, have you really sat down and decided which institution is going to provide you the best education? What institution is going to offer you the resources you need academically or athletically? And he have not did that. He was caught up in the whole likes and offers situation. I had to break down to him that offers expire. Most of the offers have a 14-day rule. Some can put a stipulation on it that this is good for 7 days. I've known coaches that said this offer, I need to know something within 48 hours type situation, because there are other student athletes out there that are being recruited at the exact same time. And there has been practices collegiately where that coach will make that offer to two different athletes. And usually the first one that make it or the first one that don't drag their time frame is going to be the one that collect that scholarship. And that's why that open communication is extremely important. And just as anything, when you create space of no communication going on, it allows other things to seep in and cause some friction or cause some misunderstanding and some different feelings because communication hasn't taken place over a time frame. Teenagers have the tendency to wait for adults to communicate and vice versa, but teenagers have to know that they can reach out to the coach and vice versa, the coach can reach out to them. A lot of the collegiate coaches also have to balance their collegiate season in the midst of recruiting and things of that nature. So it's not in a contest of who's going to contact who first. Definitely establishing communication is the key of keeping things going when it comes to those offers and signing in the right institution.
Coach Richards, Coach Williams, what do you think about after one of your athletes goes on an official visit? How do you guide him or her until he or she has actually made a decision?
I think the best advice for high school coaches is just listening to them and letting them talk about their visit and getting to know them as well in terms of what they really need and what they're looking for within a university, whether it be, you know, the academic side, the coaching side, the players on the team, anything like that. So just checking in with them often, because we definitely see the other side of it, the emotional strain that it has on them. And so just being there to listen to them and help them kind of wade through whatever decision making that they need help with, being supportive.
I think on our end, when the kid comes back from the trip, I kind of do like Mr. Moore does. I sit them down and I'd ask them a bunch of questions. Do they have your major? Can you see yourself being there for 4 to 5 years? Can you, do you think you can vibe with the team? What are your thoughts about the coach? And I just kind of debrief them as far as that's concerned with a bunch of questions and let them think it through. And then I tell them, now it's time for you to go back and do the research on the school. Yeah, you had a good time. They showed you everything that they wanted to show you. And I'm an old football coach, and I know that when football teams bring you in, they're gonna show you the best thing, but you know how they're gonna treat you when you get down there, when they got you. So you got to go back and research and do those types of things. And then as time passes by, And another thing I ask them, I say, did they offer you? Okay, and if they did, how much was it? Do you think you could work with that? And then I go into let's think about it a little bit. Are there any other offers that are on the table? How does it compare with the one that you got from them? And then we just kind of work through it. I had one young man, just for instance, he got a full offer from a school, and he had a good relationship with the coach and everything. And then somebody tried to come in late and take him away from SEC school. And I mean, just because it was a big SEC school, he got big-eyed for it. And I asked him, I say, man, what you want to do? He said, well, coach, this school's been with me for a long time, and they've been following me, and this one just jumped in. Even though I would go be in the SEC, I think I need to go to the smaller school because I vibed with the team. I said, Dre, that's what you need to do then. You know, so they kind of think it through themselves. And you know, our kids are smart. I give them credit for being smart, and they know what's best for them. And you know, I talk to the parents a lot too, and they know which direction they want to go.
And to piggyback on Greg, a good point is, did you get a chance to sit down with the head coach at the end of that visit? And I know James can touch on that. If you went on the visit and you only dealt with the assistant coach and you didn't really sit down with the head coach, because at the end of the day, the decision is on the head coach, then it's something about that visit that wasn't quite right, because I know that head coach want to get a feel for you, just like that specialty coach or that coach that you'll be working underneath will.
Well, a lot of parents, a lot of athletes, when they first start this process, aren't even aware that there's really a lot of differences between D3, D1, NAIA, as far as regulations, what you're allowed to do. So real quickly, Coach Thomas, Coach Davis, and then I know, Richie, you can probably talk a little bit about the Ivies. You've had some experience there. What are some of the differences in what you can do, Coach Thomas, with D1 that Coach Loeffler can't at D3, et cetera, et cetera?
I think one of the most unique things, and obviously our rules keep changing, but it's no longer even just a D1. D1, D2, D3 obviously have their own differences. Right now, it's even becoming difference between institution to institution, conference to conference. So I can use Big 12 as an example, and I was also in the SEC, and I was also in the Mountain West, and I was also in the Southland. I've been in small conferences and big conferences, but you know, in the Big 12, if we sign a kid, it's guaranteed whatever we offer him, it's 4 years. It's a 4-year scholarship. When I was in the SEC, that wasn't mandatory. I think they have multi-year scholarships. That's a possibility, but not all SEC schools have to offer a 4-year. I think the Big 10 that I knew that was publicly announced doing that, the Big 10 and the Big 12 were both doing 4-year scholarship agreements. And that was mainly to cover things academically. But when it comes to our scholarship numbers, just as a whole, we're the 18 for the women, 12.5 on the men. And so, and that's a fully funded. So any school that's fully funded does it that way, but there's a lot of things that tie in, obviously, to make 12.6 scholarships work. There's academics involved. There's Pell Grants. You know, for some kids, there's loans, there's this, there's that. There's not a ton of full scholarships out there, but there are a lot of resources, just like D2 and D3, where you can couple academics, you can couple institutional aid from different things or different majors that you may go on. If it could be ag, if I had a kid that wanted to come to Texas Tech and ag, or if I knew you wanted to go to certain university in this, they give out a lot of departmental scholarships to quality students. And for a lot of state schools, most of the schools in Texas and a lot of them surrounding, if you get any kind of academic money, it waives your out-of-state tuition for a lot of these schools as well. So if you qualify and you meet NCAA parameters, like 3.5 GPA, certain type of test scores, and you get $100 or $1,000 at certain universities, it could be in any surrounding state, that waives out of state, and they add any kind of scholarship to that, you're pretty much getting a lot closer than even coming to some smaller local schools. So it's you almost have to be a math major these days in the world of track and field. You have to almost have an accountant. If you're not like football, basketball, where if they offer you, you know what the offer is. Track and field is a lot more interaction and discussion about how to make these things work. And the lower the division to some extent, the more you're doing that, because they don't get the opportunity just to throw out the full scholarships like we do. So it's definitely a little bit different.
Coach Loeffler, how's it all different?
Yeah, we can. I feel like we can start contact pretty early, and a lot of the Division III coaches I know are willing to put in the work to do that. So we can start reaching out via phone call, text, emails pretty early on, and that means that we can start that relationship really early. But it also means that we have to kind of continue that all the way through, knowing full well that the Division I schools and Division II schools are going to be coming with their offers later. So we're just basically trying to establish that relationship and show that we try to develop kids and we try to put the work in. It's not just a club program. It's not just like, hey, show up when you feel like it. Division III is a really competitive level. I was a Division III athlete myself, and I love being able to continue on into coaching in Division III. So I have a big sweet spot for that division in my heart. So I love the fact that we get the chance to, start early with kids. I think January 1st of their junior year is when they can start official visits with us, but we do have a lot of kids taking unofficials earlier and coming back for an official visit later. So we just get the chance to kind of start reaching out earlier. For a long time, we weren't allowed to actually do anything on social media with them, and they just changed that for us after Division I also had done that. They'd actually completed that before us. So we were kind of in the dark. We couldn't, be their friend on Facebook, or not that a lot of them don't use Facebook. I know there's cooler apps out there now. I'm learning. But yeah, we couldn't do that. And so that changed, and that gave us a little bit better platform again. And we are utilizing stuff like that with our program, but yeah, it's just being able to reach out earlier, and we don't have dead periods the same way that some of the other divisions do. So we can reach out quite a bit, and we can reach out pretty constantly. And I feel for the two gals we have here that said they felt overwhelmed with it. I know how much that must have taken your time and effort. So I'm glad you guys both survived and got some great schools. So congratulations.
Richie, can you talk to us a little bit about the Ivies and how that may differ?
Yeah, and I know they've got official visits too. They can't offer the money as scholarships. They do, like James was saying, there's money everywhere in universities, especially ones with most of the Ivies have giant endowments, and they find grants and other things to supplement it for the ones that they really want to help. The other thing that's even places like Harvard and Princeton, if your combined gross income is less than, it's not super low, but it's less a certain amount. A couple years ago, it was like $12,000 tuition. So that really lowers tuition. So they have a lot of aid in all sorts of ways. What they do, though, that's a little different is they do what's called a likely letter. Instead of signing an NLI, they do a likely letter, which comes out usually at the end of January, I think, and it may differ for some institutions. And that's basically, they're telling you, or maybe that may be in December. They're telling you, you're going to get in. Admissions hasn't told you that yet, but they work through admissions and get permission to do these likely letters. And it's kind of like signing the NLI, and you got to do something to mess that up to not get in. But you're talking about places that cost a tremendous amount too. So there's some issues with that. And Lauren's a great institution. My younger son was looking there a couple years ago. It's a wonderful place. But they get expensive. But they, we've had kids that have, walked on, actually one this year who's going to Rice, who's a preferred walk-on, but a lot of our kids get in. And we had one at Harvard last year who basically wasn't sure. And the coach, I've known the sprint coach there forever. And he's like, if he's not going to commit to really doing this for 4 years, I don't want to spend a likely letter on him. I said, I understand he's into choir, he's in all these things, very, very academic. But you know what? He's going to get in. He goes, well, we can't get. I said, no, he's going to get in. And I knew everything about the back. And of course, he gave up that. He said, no, I don't need the likely letter. And he got in, and he's there, and he's running, and at least indoors he was happy. So there's some different things there, but it's kind of like with the D1s and D2s. There are ways that the athletes, the coach, and the college coach, they find ways to make things work financially and in other ways in terms of walk-ons. I know one thing that's been an issue for us is we've had some pretty good male distance runners who want to go to D1s, even like Stanford, place like that, where they have no chance of walking on. I mean, there are not as many opportunities usually for walking on in sports like track and field for the men as there are for the women, and that's sometimes an issue. But again, they're at a great institution. It's not the end of the world, but that's one thing we've run into also is that most of our kids that are D1 may be more like walk-on types, and for the men, it's a lot tougher.
Well, we've been on here a little over an hour, and I do appreciate all of your time. On our way out, I want to go through each of you that's on here and just ask from your own experience, as all of us were, as coaches. Carl, start us off. What is your former decathlete? What is your best piece of advice for recruiting? For these athletes today?
I'd say, I used to tell kids this all the time, is you'll know when you get to a campus, whether it's home or not, and if you can figure that out, then that's 90%. Like, see yourself there once you get on campus, and you'll know. I mean, there's a vibe anywhere that you go, and make sure you enjoy it, make a trip out of it. All the advice that everybody's given today was advice I gave to athletes when I recruited. I coached for 6 years, bounced all over the country a little bit, and all this advice is going to be great. I can't wait to post this up and offer it to everybody. But that's kind of my little tidbits, not to repeat what anybody else said. It's just that make sure you find a camp you can be at home at, and you see yourself there. I think that's the number one thing.
Greg?
I think what I would tell kids is be honest with yourself. Know what your limitations are. You're not going to run 11.5 as a guy. You're not going to run 11.5 and go to a D1 school. Okay, so go ahead and get that out your mind, especially if you're being a senior. But be honest with yourself, because there are some people out there that will take an 11.5 kid. So just make sure that you are, like I said, honest with yourself. Be real, be realistic, and just make sure that once you are realistic with yourself, find somewhere that's a good fit that you're going to live for the next 4 to 5 years and be comfortable with.
Jazz, Earl's our new parent coordinator for recruiting for the state of Texas.
For me, I 100% agree with Greg. I do. I talk to a lot of parents and a lot of athletes. So I think a lot of folks are unrealistic, and again, they may not have the big school time, but they want to go to the big school and have and it's not saying that they can't blossom into that kid, but I think you have to be realistic at that point in time. This is my mark at this point in time. For me, I would tell folks to go to the website, look at that conference, the different conference, and see where your mark lines up. And then that may kind of help you along the way as far as where do I want to try to help market myself for that conference, for that division, for that school. Because again, I think a lot of folks are unrealistic, or they'll even look at a program, right? And they'll say, well, I'm better than this kid on the team, not understanding that kid may not be receiving any athletic scholarship. But again, they may have a 4.0, they may have great character, and that may be why they're on the team, but they just see the mark and say, well, how come they're not recruiting me because I'm better than that kid? So that would be the first thing, is to definitely be realistic with yourself. And like I stated earlier, I believe parents need to get involved as well as the athlete, and not expect that the high school coach is going to do everything for the athlete. Because in some cases, in some programs, that high school coach just may deliver whatever mail they get into that kid, and that may be all that coach may do for that program. So again, I think the families need to be involved in the recruiting, the research, that whole journey. I would encourage the families to get involved.
What do you think, Jazz? Is that good advice?
Yeah, and then I guess as far as the athlete, just making sure that you're happy. It's a lot, at least, yeah, just being a student athlete. So I would say just make sure you're happy and that you can handle it.
Richie, what's some advice here?
I'd say, am I on here? You know, the three of you athletes that are on here, and Jasmine, I was with you in Finland, if you remember. You know, they're a little different than a lot of the athletes we have, and the average college athlete maybe, in that we tell our kids that, you know what, you got to be happy at the place you go to if you don't compete ever again after the day you walk on campus. You know, you get an injury, the coach leaves, whatever, you're still happy there. It's where you want to go and be in school. Now, I know there are some athletes at a high level that if something changes, they can go somewhere else. That's great, but you just got to be happy with where you are, regardless of the track and field program. That's the best thing I can say.
Coach Thomas, thoughts?
I mean, I agree with a lot of things everybody's saying. I think as a coach personally, in the situations and experience that I've seen other people have, it's that athlete and coach relationship, that athlete and other student athletes on your team relationship, that means more than anything. I'm never more, if there's going to be ever a time you're happy with somebody telling you no, it's because they tell you no because this is what felt like home to me. This is what felt right to me. The same thing as I wouldn't want a kid to choose my school because they like the fountain outside of their hotel, or they think this room was really nice, or they thought our indoor track was beautiful. It has to be more than just that. Those are important parts of it, but those don't make your experiences great. And the ones that I can always go back and think of long-term, who's done well collegiately, post-collegiately, finish out their senior year well in high school great, are the people who just were excited to be a part of the new experience they're going to be a part of, not the person who had to accept a scholarship that was going to pay the bills or had to do this or had to do that. It was that place that knew it was home, knew it's where you wanted to be. Yeah, there was a few things that tugged you left and right, but at the end of the day, when you made your decision, it's like, this is right. This is as right as it can be. And those are the ones that typically have the best experience. So I think relationships are a two-way street. You have to work hard at it. The coach has to work hard at it. And if there's really that butting of heads where not saying it's an argument, this, that, whatever, but it just doesn't mesh well, you know it. Find that mesh and then you go to work.
Coach Loeffler?
I think my advice would be that if you were driven enough to want to run in college, there's supposed to be, or there should be, a place for you to do that. I definitely believe that. You don't have to have the times to just show what your potential is. Some of us came from the times were not there and did great things in college. So you can find a place to go run. You just, like a lot of the coaches are saying, have to find a place that you're comfortable with and proud to be a part of and driven to make it a better place than when you found it. So just believe it, that you can find that spot and you'll get the chance to run.
London.
Okay, well, Richie kind of said what I was going to say about how, I mean, the most consistent thing that I heard was you need to be happy wherever you choose, whether running or whatever sport is in the picture or not. I mean, you could get hurt or something happen, and that's just what I've heard most consistently was, you know, wherever you choose, whether you do it or not. And also just starting early, I feel like because we kind of waited, I mean, it's already like a nerve-wracking process and stressful, but since you wait, you kind of have this time limit that's like over your head, and that can make it a lot more stressful. So I think starting early and yeah, making sure you can be happy somewhere. You can't run or do whatever.
William, Mr. Grundy.
Man, I've heard a lot of quality things that I would pinpoint. But I think when Coach Williams said being real, that's a big thing. Coach Shelton said social media thing, and with the Cubreaths and the Moores kind of making a plan. But I think London and Coach Loeffler said it, the one word that I would look for, and that's fit. I mean, you can go, you can like the school's colors, like Coach said, or you can like this or that, but does the program fit you? And Jasmine mentioned liking the girls, and I think London said too, but does the city fit you? Does the the campus? Does their academics fit you? Does the team fit you? Because I mean, a lot of kids don't realize that college athletics isn't like high school. It's almost like a job. Your coaches they're nice to you, but they become your parent, they become your boss, a lot of other things. And when you're learning becoming an adult, that's a transition in college for personal life and all kind of other things. Athletics is something else. So if you're not real about it, you'll find that out. So finding the perfect fit and being the fit for that program. I think Coach Mercado also said that, fit is the key to me.
Coach Richards?
Basically just what everybody else said. I mean, there's two things that I tell all of my student athletes as they're going through this process is, one, can you see yourself there among the team? And, you know, knowing that coaches might change, but you're going to have to spend a lot of time with that person. So are you going to be able to bond with them and work with them? And number two is, you know, if it all got taken away, you got injured, you didn't enjoy it anymore, anything like that, that you weren't on the team, are you okay being a student there? So I really feel that those are kind of the two big questions that, you know, every student athlete needs to answer for themselves.
Coach Ervin?
I try to get the athletes to understand that life is about peaks and valleys. That holds true for collegiate athletics also. So it goes back to Jessica's point about the injuries and things of that nature. If you think your collegiate career all 4 years is going to be all peaks, that's rare that athletes have a model like that for all 4 years. You might have some valleys, but remember that those valleys build character and make you really tougher and make you really appreciate the good times, those peaks when you get to that level. And one of the last things that I usually try to tell my student athletes before they go off to college is keep God first, keep your family second, and then obviously academics and athletics and social, all those other things, which is that organization piece that you need. I try to tell kids, if you commit to going to church on Sunday, it'll prevent you from staying out late on Saturday, or make you realize staying out late Saturday and having a good time is probably a bad decision because you missed your 12 o'clock service at Willer Avenue or whatnot. So if you hold true to understanding peaks and valleys, this is just a small valley that I'm going through. I can obviously get out of it, and that'll help the psychological aspect of it. And I know I spoke to Coach Burrell at the University of Houston. A lot of college campuses are providing psychological counseling and things of that nature. So the resources are there at the universities, and it just you using your support system, which is your parents, your coaches, your high school coaches. Everybody should be able to help you get out of that peak, that valley, and climb back to that peak that you need to get to.
Luke?
Yeah, so I'd say my advice is like, make sure whenever you're like picking college or anything that this is like your home. Make sure you're feeling comfortable because your parents are going to be with you when you go to college. So you just need to make sure this is where you want to be. You feel happy here. You feel happy being on the team, and just be ready to work hard because college is different from high school. I mean, there's a lot more work involved, but it's preparing you for the real world. And so just make sure you're happy, but also ready. This is going to be a new workload and that you're comfortable doing it.
And I apologize for not mentioning it earlier, but Luke is going to run distance over at Abilene Christian. So congratulations, Luke. And it seems to be a pretty common theme here. If you put all the comments that everyone mentioned, somehow being comfortable, it's your home, you got to feel like it's the right place for you, seems to be a pretty common theme. I am going to post this recording on the TTFCA website later. Jazz, London, Luke, three of my favorite athletes over the last several years to photograph multiple times and interview at races. We thank you for taking the time with your parents to be here. Coaches, high school coaches, college coaches, thank you for taking a little over an hour to provide some recruiting advice for future parents and athletes. We greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us. Great job, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck to all you guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck,
Thank you.
everybody.
Good luck.
Y'all take care.
All right, y'all take care.
Safe.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Coach.